Zenless has one of the coolest power systems I've seen in a while, and it has sunk its claws into the single wrinkle of my brain. I've spent way too much time thinking about it. There's a lot that goes into it, and the devs make it a point to tie it back to some kind of science. Ether is weird. There's not much info into how the specifics of ether works, but there's a lot of info we can get via context clues and obsessively reading minor documents in the game. I'm already super deep into this rabbit hole, but some things started to click a little bit more, so I wanted to share my thoughts on the different kinds of ether use that we see in Zenless. So to make this simple, we're gonna break it down into three major categories: assisted, biological, and projected. Now, we don't know about whether aptitude is more present in thyrans or other species or not, but we've got an argument for it being the case with onis. More on that later. So we're gonna start off easy. Assisted use of ether is the general use of W engines. They're resonating with external ether in the environment to make effects for the agent based on how they're tuned. Drive disks further amp this. We can think of them as like the frequency that's playing out of the W engine. So in that way, everyone kind of uses ether to protect themselves. Now, before we start looking at the biological section, I'll give you a minor spoiler warning for agent stories and some part of the main story. So yeah, before you say it, biological can technically apply to everyone. Everyone alive has a base level of ether inside their bodies. That's just a fact. The major difference is to how the body reacts to it and whether they're able to utilize it in a useful or different way. So a great first example is Vivian with her super weird foresight power. I have a video with my thoughts on this already, but the long and short is I think her brain is overclocking. She takes in a bunch of signals without knowing, the brain puts a pretty solid picture together and slams it in her face with a touch of metaphor so she can process it easier. This would mean that her relationship with her internal ether is inherently stronger than other agents, and that can be for a bunch of reasons. For now, we're just gonna say she was born that way and she had a fucked up childhood. Yanagi is a more interesting case, as it kind of puts eyes on onis like Sokaku too. So for a quick recap on Yanagi, she was a soldier on a mission to take out the Oni chieftain in the war against the Onis back some years ago. She ended up solving the problem peacefully by kind of becoming the Oni chieftain herself. Sokaku's sister was the chieftain, and to stop the war, she sacrificed her own life. To make sure the other Oni recognized her as the new chief, she had her blood transfused into Yanagi. So on the surface, big whoop, war's over, right? She doesn't explode with power or do anything crazy. However, we see that something's up now with her fits of blindness. There's a common misconception that Yanagi is slowing time when she fights, but that's actually taking in all the info and reacting that fast. Her ultimate voice line in English kind of points to this too, when she says, "Mind and body," which, you know, would be the two things being overclocked. Should there be a biological component to ether that can affect the user, Yanagi is another case of overclocking your brain. The only difference is, it's not really her ability. She gets blowback from fighting too hard in that way, and the fits of blindness and headaches are likely a result of the mismatch. So then the next question to ask in this situation is it just because Sokaku's sister was someone with a strong ether match? Or do all Oni just have awesome internal ether? Now the third and final one is probably the biggest kicker. It's Harumasa, and that might be a little bit of a long shot, pun intended. He's got ether aptitude regression syndrome, which is a rare disease that gives you a pretty hefty boost to your ether aptitude at the cost of destroying your innards when you get older. The disease is so rare and understudied that there's no cure, and the oldest living person to have it made it to 26. In Harumasa's case, the disease hits his heart and lungs. Being in and out of the hospital growing up, he looked up to a doctor that took care of him and also taught him how to shoot a bow and use swords. Well, yeah, he was a weird doctor. The helpful medicine Harumasa was getting were actually cerebrospinal fluid extractions. Say that 3 times fast. They were taking the fluid to study and develop a drug that would boost ether aptitude, even if temporarily. Harumasa's doctor eventually got sick of it and wanted out, but they made him disappear real quick. Getting to the point, they make sure to inform us that it's Harumasa's heart and lungs that are affected by this ether-based condition. In both of his big action shots, it seems like he's able to focus perfectly. Time slows down, he catches his breath, and he hits the most ridiculous arrow shot known to man. Olympic gold medalist does not even begin to cut it. But check this though, he's steadying his aim and catching his breath. If an archer is able to slow their heart rate and breathing, there's less interruption when aiming and the ability to hyper-focus on the target. Ether aptitude regression syndrome might just be the bad coin flip of being more in tune with your bodily ether. Either that, or the condition makes it so there's a resonance mismatch internally, with some of it being closer to what you'd feel in a hollow. It would then make sense why the aptitude crumbles over time, and if they're exposed to a hollow when that happens, they'd corrupt almost immediately. So there was a chunk of lore that dropped after I had already written this video. Firstly, a W engine is probably anything that can make a proper sound wave of a certain frequency. Secondly, there are ether matches. It seems that Thyron of a particular species are more likely to share one, or at least a particular frequency. The Tiger Bell from Jufufu's story is a W engine that lets Tiger Thyrons consume other Tiger Thyrons to get a power-up, and that's only because they are similar in resonance. Incredibly shady, but more evidence to prove there is some kind of shared internal ether among species like Oni and Thyron. Now, projection is the newest one, and where a lot of darts are going to be thrown at the wall, so you're just going to have to walk with me. We don't know how ether manipulation works exactly, but we do know that it's something that can be taught. If everyone has internal ether and there's a way to teach this bonus awareness, then there is going to be some kind of through line when it comes to use. Ashikai has an incredible video out going way deeper into the science and offering some different perspectives about how Zenless can really be compared to a CRT TV. I very highly recommend you watch that. Way smarter than anything I'm gonna do here. There was one point they made that really stuck out to me, and it was the golden glow that both Yixuan and Astra have when they use their powers. Now, could it be a bit of a long shot? Maybe. But if the golden glow is the indicator of someone using ether manipulation, then we have two pretty solid cases for it. Now, when it comes to projection, it's weird. If we think of it as a taught practice, then Yixuan's way of doing it is subconsciously memorizing the way the talismans are written. There is then the case to think that the other high preceptors of Yankuei Summit have used talismans in the same or similar ways, but I think that might just be the easy mode version of ether manipulation. Astra is the more interesting case because it seems like she just stumbled upon it. She knows music and she's able to imitate a W engine by herself. She knows what different songs she'll sing to resonate with the surrounding ether, and we have visuals of the sheet music. So in both cases, what is going on here? Both cases are weird, but in both cases, the user is externalizing their ether and syncing the outside ether to it. In that way, it's easier to mimic the effects of a W engine, or to find disturbances and enemies, like the issue of the giant gold box. Now this one is a bit of a doozy. What did she do here? She handed talismans to everyone and had them make a big square and hit everybody with the OG mass resurrection. Is there a way we can interpret this? Yes! I think. If we think of the golden talismans as extensions of Yixuan's ether, being projections of her frequency, the box would almost be like the inverse of a hollow. If it's an area saturated by one ether frequency, which happens to be hers, she'd be able to resonate with the ether tied to it, which is then the whole box. Then she'd be able to find the goop inside of the box and exercise it. This is all guesses though. It absolutely looked like magic. The point is, both of them are projecting their frequency outward in some way and influencing the surrounding ether in a small or large way. Now, could this get better or worse depending on someone's ether aptitude? Absolutely. Is every agent likely going to be capable of this? Absolutely not. There is also the case for intelligent constructs and whether or not they're going to be able to do anything close to this. But if we break it down in this way, we do learn quite a bit. If there is a biological component to ether that some of the agents are using already, there's potential for other agents in the future to have similar minor ether powers. And for the projection, there's a chance that not only will the proxy learn how to do something similar, but that we'll have other agents who understand how to project their ether and use it on a grand scale. All in all, I think it's incredibly exciting when we break it down in this way. There's still a defined purpose for everything, and it all ties back to the way ether interacts with the body. But the question for another time is, what about miasma? I'm gonna pose that question to you guys, and I also wanna ask, what do you think about this breakdown, and what kind of ether powers do you think we'll see next? If you enjoyed this video and like things like theories and story explainers, feel free to subscribe or drop a nice comment or something. I do also have a Discord and stream on Twitch, so feel free to drop in so we can yap about lore.